Family. It's beautiful, but yet chaotic. It's joyful, but yet overwhelming. And the list could go on and on and on. And sometimes it could lead us to ask the question, is my family functional or dysfunctional? I mean, we've all been there. We've all had those moments, those situations where we just throw our hands in the air and we say, how did I get here? What happened? What went wrong? I thought that I did everything that was necessary to make sure that everything would go smooth and up and to the right. What happened? Family. There's so many different layers and dimensions of family. Whether it's marriages, kids, grandparents, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and even those people that have become a part of your life that have become your family, but they're not blood related. They're complicated. They're not always easy. At times, we just want to give up and give in and say it's not worth it. And other times, we're willing to fight to the end of the earth. It reminds me of two brothers. They inherited the family business. One brother had made the decision that he wanted to see the business move forward. He wanted to be innovative. He wanted to expand. But the other brother, he didn't want that. He liked tradition and stability. And it began to develop a rift between the two brothers. And over time, the rift began to spill out into everything that they did. Every time they got together as a family, everybody could feel the tension in the air. It reminds me when I was a kid, we used to do these things called a family reunion. How many of you remember those? How many of you actually participated in those? It's okay, you can show of hands. I remember as a kid, every year or every so many years, we would do a family reunion. And we'd go to that family reunion and it was inevitable. It was like clockwork. It was asking the question, who was gonna fight this year? Who was going to get into a disagreement? Because my family was competitive. It didn't matter if it was horseshoes or board games or cards or whatever it was. They were competitive, and we knew that somebody was going to get mad at somebody else. And what was amazing to me as a kid as I watched this transpire year after year, you would think you would figure this out after time, but we didn't. And year after year, they got into fights over things that really didn't matter. It didn't make a difference, but yet it created such a rift in our family at times that they wouldn't talk to each other for months or even years. And then as time passed, they would come back together and they would look at each other and say, why were we fighting to begin with? What was the big deal? How did we get here? Today we launch into a brand new series, My Not So Functional Family. And I want us today to look at a family that on the surface, when you begin to examine them, you would say they look like any ordinary family that you may be a part of or you've seen or experienced. But there was something different about this family. Some things transpired that I think that you and I can begin to walk away with and begin to learn and draw some wisdom from that we can begin to apply to our own relationships. And it doesn't even have to be just family relationships. So if you have your Bibles this morning, I want to encourage you to open up to Genesis chapter 13. We're going to be looking at a man by the name of Abraham. Abraham was introduced in Genesis chapter 11. And in Genesis chapter 11, you see a genealogy of Abraham and his family. And what you discover about Abraham is him and his family and where they lived and the things that they experienced. They weren't a family that was close to God or even experienced God or knew God. But Abraham was called by God to follow him and to trust him, to go where he had never been before. But from Abraham's perspective, he had everything going for himself in life. He had wealth. He had notoriety. He had a great wife, a thriving business. And God asked him to give it all up, to walk away, to trust him, and to go where he had never gone before. And we find ourselves in the middle of Abraham's story, where he trusted. where he walked by faith and obedience to say, okay, God, I'll go where you want me to go, a place that I've never been, a place that I've never experienced, among people that I've never had an encounter with. I'll go and I'll trust you. And when Abraham left, he took his wife, and his nephew Lot followed him. And they took with them some of their possessions and the things that they had, some of their cattle and some of the people that worked for them. And they went on this journey and they trusted God. And while on this journey, over time, Abraham began to amass even greater wealth. But not only Abraham, so did his nephew Lot. And they found themselves in a predicament. One that from the surface, for most of us would say, I understand the argument, it's a valid argument, and I understand how people could get mad in this situation. But the way that Abraham begins to handle the situation is amazing, and it's something that you and I can begin to draw from and begin to apply in our own lives and our own relationships. So in Genesis chapter 13, and we're going to pick up in verse 5. It says, now Lot, who was moving about with Abraham, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support them while they traveled together. For their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. And quarreling or fighting arose between Abraham's herders and Lot's. The Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land at the time. Abram said to Lot, let's not have any quarreling between you and me or between your herders and mine. For we are close relatives. We're family. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go left, then I'll go right. And if you go right, I'll go left. It's interesting as you begin to read the pages and begin to form the scene in your mind. I mean, imagine both Abram, who we know as Abraham, because God changes his name, but Abraham and Lot began to develop a problem. And it wasn't in the beginning so much between them as it was the people that worked for them. It says they began fighting. They began fighting over the land, over the resources that were there. And out of Abraham's wisdom, he approaches Lot and he says, hey, Lot, hey, I think it's best for you and for me if we don't fight. I know we've got a problem, but I promise there's a solution. And his solution was simple. You go left, and if you go left, I'll go right. But if you choose to go right, I'll go left. So Lot, you choose, whatever you do. I just don't want to fight. I value the relationship too much to fight with you. I don't want to create a problem between us and the rest of our family because it will begin to spill over into every other relationship that we have. So we've got to nip this in the bud right now. We've got to take care of it. And it's interesting because here at this point, Abraham makes a decision. Abraham makes a decision that I think for so many of us, that we just move right past this decision just to go after what we think that we want or what we need. Abraham was determined to be a peacemaker, not a troublemaker. He was determined to have peace with his nephew. And as the uncle in the relationship, he, in some ways, had the right to do whatever he wanted to do. He could have just simply told Lot, hey, this is mine. Go find your own. I mean, you've been following me everywhere I go. You've been benefiting off of everything that I've been doing. You only have what you have because of me. But he didn't. He didn't throw it in his face. He just said, hey, Lot, the land that we're in right now, it can't support us. It can't support us. So he chose to be a peacemaker instead of creating trouble. What about your relationships? What about the people that you're closest to? What is your natural response when difficulty arises? What's your natural response? Is it to fight for what you believe you deserve and what you're owed? Or do you choose the route of being a peacemaker? You know what? It's not worth the fight. It's not worth me destroying the relationship. So I'm going to choose the high road. And I know all the arguments that you're thinking. Well, I deserve it. I've put in more work than Lot has. I've given my dues and my times. There's a hierarchy here, and we just need to follow the system. Lot just needs to understand his role within the dynamics of the family, and everything will be okay. But that's not what Abraham chose. He looked out of compassion and mercy and said, you know what, Lot? You choose. What direction do you want to go? Do you want to go left or do you want to go right? Because whatever you choose, I'll go the other. But how many times have we dug our feet into the ground and fought for what we think we deserve or what we feel is rightfully ours? But choosing the path of a peacemaker versus a troublemaker, look what it says, picking up in verse 10. It says, Lot looked around and he saw the whole plain of the Jordan towards Zoar was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out towards the east. The two men parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain, and he pitched his tents near Sodom. Now the people of Sodom, they were wicked, and they were sinning greatly against the Lord. So we see what happens. Abraham gives Lot a choice. Lot, hey, you decide. You want to go left? You want to go right? Lot, like any young man would do, he's going to use what he sees. And so he begins to just scan the landscape. Where is it that I'm going to benefit the most? Because that's where I want to go. And so he looks out across the land. He's like, that's it. There's plenty of fields for my cattle to feed in the fields. There's plenty. I'll never run out. There's fresh water. It's never going to dry up. Man, that is the place. That's the place I want to go. And Abraham's like, all right. Because he saw the other place. And it didn't look near as appealing as the place that he wanted to go. It didn't look anything like Canaan. He was like, that's where I want to go. I want to be there. And we began to discover something about human nature, about you and about me and about Abraham and about Lot. The heart of every problem is the heart. And we get a glimpse of both Abraham's heart and Lot's heart. Our heart was, all right, you know what? I'm going to go back to the promise that God made to me in Genesis 12, where he said, I will give you so much that you won't even be able to believe all that I give you. I will bless you beyond anything that you could ever imagine or dream of. But Lot, on the other hand, his heart, it was about the material. It was about meeting what he felt was personal to him. It was a reflection of both of their hearts. One was trusting God, and one was trusting what they could see, what they knew was right in front of them. And it's the same crossroad that you and I find ourselves with every situation that we deal with in life, every relationship. Every decision that we make is a reflection of our heart, whether it is selfish or selfless. It's a choice. It's a choice that you and I make every single day. And Abraham was at that crossroad of that choice. Abraham could live in the land of Canaan, where it wasn't as plentiful, as beautiful, as massive as around the Jordan. And so we begin to see a reflection of his heart. And so I ask you this question: when it comes to your relationships, what is your motive? What is it that drives your decisions? Because what we begin to see in Abraham is a heart that trusts God. A heart that says, God, you are on the throne of my heart, not this world. God, you have complete control. I will trust you. I will live within it. Even though it doesn't seem like this is the best decision, even though it doesn't seem like I'm going to benefit from this, I will trust you. And then Lot, on the other hand, I know that I've been extremely blessed and I've benefited immensely from my uncle. And I know the right thing to do is to give him the better land, but you know what? I'm going to take what is best for me and for my people, my family, my workers. And this is what's better. This is so much more appealing than that. We see a reflection of his heart. Our heart, Jeremiah tells us in Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. Listen to what he says. He says, am I in the wrong place? I'm in Chronicles. That's not going to help. I'm looking at that going, that's not what it says. In Jeremiah 17:9, it says, the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? The heart's deceitful. How many times do we make decisions based off the way that we feel versus off of the trust that we have in God? How often? How often when it comes to your relationships, you are making decisions based off of what's best for you versus what's best for the other person? I mean, we see it right here firsthand where Abraham gives us a reflection of what it looks like to have a heart that passionately and obediently follows after and trusts God. And a heart like Lot's that simply just goes after and pursues the things of this world. The things that we have said, if this would just happen, if I could just get that promotion, if I could get that raise, if I could just develop that relationship. It's a reflection of our heart. Every decision that you and I make, but look as it continues on. Picking up in verse 14, it says, the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had parted from him, he says, look around from where you are, to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west. All the land that you see, I will give you and your offspring forever. You got to understand the tension that sits in the middle of that statement. Abraham and Sarah, they don't have kids. And they're up there in age. I mean, they're past childbearing years. And so for me, as I think about Abraham sitting in that moment and God making this promise where he says, Abraham, don't worry. Don't worry. Look at this. Look at all of this. Look at everything. I promise you, it will be yours. I will bless you. And not only will I bless you, I will bless your offspring. I immediately go into doubt mode. I immediately go into fear. Hold on, God, back up the truck. I don't think you understand where we're at right now. Me and my offspring, I have no offspring. Me and the future generations, the future little Abrahams that are running around in the house, it ain't happening, God. You want me to trust you? And so he gives Abraham this promise. He's like, trust me. I will make your offspring. Listen to what he says in verse 16. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone can count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. He says, go walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you. He's like, Abraham, trust me. This is the promise that I have for you. Trust me. How often do we take our relationships and just simply lay them before God and say, God, I'm going to trust you in the middle of this relationship. It seems so fractured and broken. It seems impossible that there's no way that it could ever be repaired, but I am going to trust you. As a parent who says, I have faithfully taught my kids the way of the Lord to follow and to trust the Lord, but they've gone off on their own way, and I don't think they'll ever come back. But God says, trust me. Trust me. Or that marriage that seems like it's about to fall apart and there's no way that it could ever be restored. The differences that we have, we're miles apart. And God says, take that relationship and lay it before me and just trust me. Trust me. Trust me. Oh, but my kids want nothing to do with me. My parents, they want nothing to do with me. They don't understand me. And he's saying, trust me. He's like, Abraham, look, I want you to trust me. It's okay. Let Lot go. Let him have it. It's fine. Because what I have for you is better than what Lot could ever imagine. All Lot could do is see with his eyes. And that's the thing about faith. Faith is about you and I putting one step in front of the other, just simply trusting, even though we can't see it. It's trusting God. Okay, God, today I'm just going to put one step in front of the other. I'm just going to take one step today, God, because I'm trusting you. It's monumental in your faith journey and my faith journey to take steps of faith. He didn't want to just leave Abraham where he was. And so every day it was going to take a step of faith for Abraham to experience all that God had for him. And he says, trust me. And so he does. He goes his way, Lot goes his way, and what we know is that they both continue to thrive, but in the middle of the thriving for Lot, trouble arises. In chapter 14, we discover because of where Lot is located and because of the kings of the area that were around and the war that began to break out among them, Lot found himself in a position that he couldn't get out of. And Lot and his family and all of his employees and everything that he had was taken captive. He was no longer free. He was no longer able to enjoy what Abraham said, go have, it's yours. I'll go over here. I know this looks so much more fruitful than what I'm going to have over here, but go enjoy it because Lot, I love you and I want the best for you. Go, you can have it. I don't want to create a quarrel. I want to be a peacemaker. I don't want to create trouble between you and between me. So Lot goes off and he finds himself in the middle of trouble. Trouble that he can't get out of. And then Abraham hears the news of his nephew. That Lot's been taken captive, that he's been taken prisoner. And out of compassion and out of mercy, what does Abraham do? He doesn't say, you deserve it. You should have never gone that way. You should have just, we would have figured this out, but hey, that's what you chose. It's your bed, lie in it. But that's not what Abraham does. And Abraham really begins to give you and I a picture of who Jesus is. Because Abraham went after his nephew. He went after him. He didn't just leave him there. Look at what it says in Genesis 14. We'll pick up in verse 17. It says Abraham returned from defeating Kildalamer and the kings allied with him. The king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaviv. That is the king's valley. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abraham, saying, "Blessed be Abraham by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. And it says Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. And then the king of Sodom said to Abraham, give me the people and you keep all the goods for yourself. But Abraham said to the king of Sodom, with a raised hand, I have sworn an oath to the Lord Most High, the creator of heaven and earth. I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the strap of your sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abraham rich. I will accept nothing. I will accept nothing, but that my men have eaten and the share that belongs to me, who went with me. So Abraham, out of his love for his nephew, he goes and he gets him, and not only his nephew, but he also gets everyone that's working, all the possessions, and he brings it back. And you got to see the scene. There are two kings that come before Abraham. One king that is wicked, that is selfish, that can only think for himself, and another that is following hard after God, that is pursuing the things of God. And one king comes to him and says, blessed are you. Blessed are you. You are a man of God. You are so great and you are so mighty. It's amazing what you have accomplished. And out of that, what does Abraham do? He praises God and he gives to God what is God. He gives God glory and thanks for rescuing his nephew. And the other one that's wicked, he tries to bribe him. He tries to bribe Abraham. He says, hey, you've accomplished something amazing. Why don't you keep for yourself all of this, but give me this? Abraham sees exactly what's happening in the midst of all that's going on. And what you have to understand is when all this is happening, I'm sure that his nephew Lot is watching how he behaves. Well, what decision is Abraham going to do? What's he going to make? What's he going to choose? How is he going to navigate through this? See, there was a difference between Abraham and Lot. See, Abraham, he lived by the blessings of the Lord, not the bribery of the world. He was given an opportunity. He could live by God's blessings and trust that God had something better planned for him in his future. Or he could simply just take the bribery. Say, I deserve it. I deserve everything that we've gotten. But he didn't. He trusted in the blessing. See, Abraham, he prioritized his relationships over recognition. The relationship between him and Lot, the relationship between him and God was more important than the recognition that he would have received because of what he accomplished. It wasn't about receiving the plaque that you could hang on your wall. It wasn't about receiving the pats on the back to say, that a boy, way to go, you did it, you accomplished it. But for Abraham, it was about prioritizing the relationship with God. Because here's what I've discovered about every relationship in your life and in mine. If my relationship with God is first and it's in the right place, all my other relationships will work out. Because I will approach my relationships sacrificially. I'll approach my relationships expecting nothing in return. But wait a minute, I give and nobody ever gives back. Somebody needs to just give to me. I'm just tired of giving. Do you know that it's more blessed to give than it is to receive? Abraham was more concerned about God being on the throne of his heart than he was the world. So when it comes to your relationships, does God set the tone for them? Is God the one that you look at for how you should navigate and live through every relationship that you have? Or are your relationships based on what you see around you because of what the world has done or what the world tells you relationships should look like. Because it's a choice. It's a choice that you and I make every single day. We make the choice every morning when we get up to decide whether or not God will be the throne or have the throne on our heart. We decide it every day when we get up. Or, you know what, it's just another day. I'm going to go out and live, and I'm just going to do, and I'm going to work, and I'm just going to kind of exist within the midst of my relationships and my family. And hopefully it's a good day. I hope everything turns out, but you know what? It'll be what it is. Or you know what? Today, God, you have the throne of my heart. And today, whatever it is that you bring to me, whether it be good or whether it be bad, I will honor and I will glorify you. I will worship you no matter where I'm at or no matter what's happening. Because your life and my life, it speaks volumes about who God is in our life. It speaks volumes. People are waiting to see how you face the challenges of this world. If you're a follower of Jesus, they're waiting to see how will you face the challenges of the disruption in your family. When you don't have the white picket fence and the leave it to beaver family. Does that age me? When you don't have it, the world is watching and waiting. How will you respond? Will you respond the way that Abraham responded? God, my heart today is a reflection of the work that you are doing in me because I want people to see you through me. God, I'm prioritizing my relationship with you over ever being recognized by anyone or anything in this world. God, I value you so much that I want to lay down my life for the benefit of others so that they can come to know you. I mean, he's just giving us a foreshadow of Jesus who comes and ultimately does the greatest thing that's ever been done on this earth. That Jesus, out of his love for you and for me, he came and he died on the cross. He demonstrated what it means to sacrifice, what it means to lay down your life out of love for someone else. So let me ask you this question. In what relationship right now that you have, who do you need to be a peacemaker with? In what relationship that you have right now where you just know, I need to be a peacemaker here and not a troublemaker? Because I believe today that no matter where you are or where you've been or what you've done, that every one of us today here has a next step to take. And it will be a step of faith. And for some of us, it means that we're going to be a peacemaker in the midst of our relationships. We're not going to try to put a stake in the ground and say, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. No, today I'm going to be a peacemaker. So what relationship in your life that you have that you need to be a peacemaker today? Maybe that's your next step. Maybe for you, your relationship is simply to begin a relationship with God. That's your next step. That everything else has had the throne of your heart except for God. And so today I want to challenge you to take the next step. No matter where you are. No matter where you've been. And you have to do the same thing that Abraham did. You have to step in faith and say, I trust you today. God, I trust you and I will step out in faith. And here's the beauty about taking the next step. You're not alone. Abraham wasn't alone and you and I aren't alone, but it requires us to take a step. And today, if you want to take a next step, here's a couple of ways you can do that. Maybe you have the church app right there on the app. It's got on the very front page the connection card. Simply fill it out. Let us know what next step you're taking so that we can take it with you. Maybe you grab a connection card in the offering boxes on your way out, and you just simply fill it out and drop it in. Or maybe you stop by the Connect Center in the lobby. I'd love to talk with you. I'd love to pray with you. But here's what I believe, that every one of us here today has a next step to take. Will you pray with me? Father, Lord God, we thank you for today, that we can gather here, that we can worship, that we can open up your word and begin to get a glimpse of, first and foremost, how loving and gracious and merciful you are. And Father, how we, as your creation, how we can begin to take steps to draw closer to you. And so today, Father, I pray that each of us here will take a next step. For some, that next step is simply to be a peacemaker in a specific relationship. And for some, that next step is to trust you and to give you full control of our lives. As you tell us in Romans 10, 9 and 10, that if we believe in our heart and confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord, that we will be saved. That it is a picture of surrender. And so, Father, today I pray that we will just simply trust you and that we will step out in faith as you work in our lives. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen.